And we are very much in underwriting, early due diligence. There's even some more sophisticated customers of TestFit that use TestFit as like a sourcing engine, being able to vet sites before even getting a survey. Sometimes that can take a long time to get a historical or even a new one. So the core value of TestFit is really working on underwriting land and picking the right deals to move forward with. There's nothing worse than spending too much time on the wrong deal.
Hi, Adam Gower here, founder of GowerCrowd.com and host of this podcast YouTube series, Real Estate Market Watch, Current Events Through a Real Estate Lens. Today, we are going to be taking a look at one of the current events that is impacting commercial real estate. That is, of course, AI. My guest today is Jack Jaws, who is Director of New Markets at TestFit.io. Now, today's podcast is definitely audible. You can listen to it. Of course, it's a podcast, but your best bet is to go to YouTube, to the Gower Crowd YouTube channel, because we're going to be doing a live screen demo of the TestFit platform. And it is going to blow your mind over here. It doesn't really matter what aspect of the industry you are in. But just to understand how AI is impacting the industry, it makes it worthwhile following this particular episode today. However, if you are a developer, ground-up developer, an architect, an acquisitions guy, a broker who sells land, you need to watch this demo. This is where you are able to identify highest and best use with full detail of all the zoning requirements and whatever specifications you have for whatever it is that you're building for a piece of land, and get a feasibility study in seconds. Jack is going to walk you through exactly how to use that using the TestFit software, and it is extraordinary. All right. This is one of the most incredible, he said, completely hyping it up far too much. It is mind-blowing. It's one of the most incredible uses of AI that I've seen so far for commercial real estate. All right, so that's what you're going to get. I do recommend you go to YouTube to watch this. It's well worth it. And also go to gowercrowd.com. I'll put some links in there to TestFit, to Jack's LinkedIn profile. And while you're there, subscribe to my newsletter, would you please? I'm going to be sending these out on a fairly regular basis over the next few months. You don't want to miss them. There is no doubt in my mind, having seen this demo today and others in this series, that AI is fundamentally changing the way commercial real estate is. In general, how sponsors and how investors actually work with AI in the industry. And if you think that AI is just ChatGPT, then you are missing the whole point. That is exactly what you're going to be finding out now from Jack Jaws, Director of New Markets at TestFit.io, coming up right now. Jack, thanks for joining us today. We're going to jump straight in on this conversation. I'm just going to ask you, we're going to start with 10 questions to give everybody a good sense of what we're going to be doing in the demo. So, number one, who are you? What is your company? And what does your product and website do?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Jack here at TestFit, Director of New Markets. We help anyone in AECDO automate feasibility studies.
AECDO. Okay, you'll have to translate that.
Architecture, engineering, construction, development, and operations.
Okay. Okay, so you actually preemptively answered the next question, which is, who is the product built for primarily?
Yeah, I mean, anyone in that spectrum, developers, primarily GCs, architects, civils, brokers, and even cities are using TestFit today.
Okay, what is the pain point that in a commercial real estate workflow that triggered you to build this?
Yeah, so Clifton and Ryan were the ones who built it. Clifton was working as an in-house designer for a real estate developer and realized it took way too long to do a feasibility study just to run a pro forma on it. Partnered with Ryan to see if they could build it, and spoiler, they did.
All right, so what's the how are you solving this problem with your product?
Yeah, so with TestFit, we basically are able to automate the feasibility planning and analysis of the layout through some generative AI and really, really smart engineering.
Okay, so we need to understand what the product is. What is the single most valuable outcome that a user gets from using it?
Honestly, it's getting your time back, and I know a lot of people say that, but it's we can do a comprehensive analysis in minutes, run density studies, costing, cut and fill analysis, pro forma, all in the time it takes to brew another pot of coffee. We can do it a lot faster. You can test a lot more options, and feel a lot more confident in what you're underwriting.
Okay, so I think we missed something. What does the product do at a high level? What is it actually?
Yeah, so we call it a generate then edit platform that looks at sites and works to understand the highest value on that land through testing thousands of iterations per millisecond. So
Highest value in terms of use and parking, and just describe exactly what the kind of high level,
yeah,
what it does.
yeah, exactly. So for any typology, whether that be multifamily, industrial, data centers, retail, we can start to design and give you options for layouts, right? So you're essentially doing that site plan, test fit, kind of like our name, site fit, whatever you want to call it. We can get those options out the door really quickly within our software, in just a matter of a few seconds.
So this is primarily for ground up developers, people that are developing raw land, is it?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, we're primarily focused on raw land, ground up development, anything kind of new.
And as far as the AI is concerned, you lean into zoning regulations and et cetera. Just explain that briefly as well, if you would, please. What's behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we bring a lot of data into TestFit. It's not just zoning. We're bringing in elevation, so we can do a cut and fill analysis, understanding how much dirt you're moving. We bring in parcel data, so we understand the actual legal boundary of it. You don't have to do that yourself. That comes with FEMA flood zone, wetlands, major utility data, soil data, and all of that comes together with some built knowledge into the software, into something we call presets, which is really functioning as your core for different typologies, right? So a preset would be something like a garden building or a podium or a 5/2, so that there's
Hmm.
ingrained knowledge into the software, and then all of our customers can go in and start to customize that for themselves as well, to get their, unique results.
Okay. And so what it does, okay, so what changes immediately for a user first time they log in? What's going to be the eureka when they get in there?
Honestly, it's like having an engine at your fingertips. I like to make the comparison of if you ever seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari, when Ford's son steps into the GT40 for the first time, and it's just a dramatically different experience, right? Like, that you kind of know it today. You go and you're just like, hey, someone has that land for me. I think I can get, 12 units an acre or something on that, but I don't really know what that looks like. TestFit can
Hmm.
show that to you instantly. So it's a whole different experience, and it really feels like you have a lot more power.
And it mostly it's at the beginning of the CRE life cycle, right? The people use it feasibility before they buy something typically.
Yes, yeah, we are very much in underwriting early due diligence. There's even some more sophisticated customers of TestFit that use TestFit as like a sourcing engine, being able to vet sites before even getting a survey. Sometimes that can take a long time to get a historical or even a new one. So the core value of TestFit is really working on underwriting land and picking the right deals to move forward with. There's nothing worse than spending too much time on the wrong deal.
So what does this replace or dramatically reduce in terms of when somebody uses it?
Honestly, it's a lot within feasibility, right? You can basically destroy all of your runaway pursuit costs, though. I like to make that comparison. My background working at Brookfield, we were on one of our projects, we were on option 178. That's just absolute runaway pursuit cost, right? You spent so much time, so much team of the team's time for something that we probably should have used an option earlier on. With TestFit, you can do that exhaustive testing really quickly and get those results and feel confident to move forward.
That's fascinating. So how did you get to 176 iterations? This was why? Because you look at one and then you got to go back and redraw it and calculate, and you got to go back and redraw it and calculate. Like
Yeah,
why so long?
well, we were in the mixed use group, so it was retail mixed with multifamily and hotel. a lot of voices involved. The feasibility has as many voices as will ever be as part of the project, right? You've got leasing telling you from all different types of lease prospects that want different things. You have different hotel operators, you have different multifamily operators, you have different capital people coming in, and then you have all of your consultants, your GC, your civil architect. Everyone's telling you something different with each iteration. That they're all derivative of each other, but eventually you have to find the one that works. And with TestFit, because we bring all of that into one platform, you're putting it in your cost, you're putting in your cut and fill. It closes the gap on that conversation and makes it a lot faster to have in a meeting room. I can have leasing and my preferred hotel and multifamily developer and actually do the layouts and figure out what's going to work really quickly.
Actually, in real time as well, right? Not
Real
waiting for
time.
something.
Yeah, we have a lot of clients that on the consultant side that do it real time. We have developers that are sitting in, capital committee talking through real time designs within TestFit.
Okay. So how would you convince somebody listening now who's skeptical that this is actually useful, right? Who's used to the old way of doing it?
Absolutely. I mean, the old way of doing it, there's nothing wrong with it, right? We've all been within Excel and you're trying to, wait for that. The question is really, how long does it take you to underwrite a deal? We're all trying to adopt faster ways of working, whether that be AI or automation or just streamlining everything. And historically, it takes at least a week to get a full underwriting done on the feasibility study, right? A lot of people to bring on board with TestFit, because we've been around for almost 10 years, we can get that down to days, if not just hours. We have folks that are able to do that much quicker, and that allows them to not only push forward on better developments, also we're able to increase yields on site. So even like some of our larger industrial customers of TestFit have been able to realize 8% higher yields on sites that they use TestFit on versus when they do it their historical way.
Really?
Um,
That's interesting. How have they done that? Is just more efficient use of the land than they had anticipated?
More efficient use of land, and that really comes from exhaustive testing, right? Like we would love to spend all day, or some of us would love to spend all day redrawing and testing different variations of designs, but that takes a lot of time. With TestFit, because we're running so many iterations, we can feed you the highest yielding scheme or option in real time.
Jack, can you give me some? You've already rattled off a few, but give me some,
Sure.
not necessarily case studies, but examples of people and how they use the platform. Like what is a? Give me some examples of of people who have benefited the most and how they use it.
I really believe it comes down to you get in or you get out what you put in, right? And the people who really find success within TestFit are the ones who are willing to dive in and test a lot of options, right? We have architects that are burning through feasibility studies for their clients and doing it, as a pursuit for business, right? For them, it's business development. But on the developer side, we have folks that are, running through, hundreds to thousands of sites a year because they want to find the right one that works. And especially in, our cyclical environment and the part of the cycle that we're in right now, we have to find the best site. We can't go out and try and get capital for sites that really shouldn't work or really won't work in the end. And better to find those earlier on. But I think, at the end of the day, it comes down to having a good understanding of what your build box is, building out your properties and customization within the software, and then it's a rinse and repeat from there.
And who typically, who are your main clients when you look at it as across the entire spectrum? Is it architects? Is it developers? Is it brokers? Like, who's really leaning into this software?
But yeah, it's a great question. It depends on the typology, to be totally honest, because it depends on what you're building and for why. But overall, developers are our largest market across all typologies. When you get into things like retail, it's more architects, civils, and then GCs. When you get into multifamily, it's architects and GCs more than civils. It kind of just depends. But we have brokers and cities coming in We have some cities that have started to use it as a zoning back check before they publish their zoning, is my favorite use case of TestFit by far. Being able to make sure that what they're planning for in their zoning code is buildable. And then brokers as well from the industrial side, being able to, broker the land, and have a more cohesive BOV for them.
That's interesting as well. You mentioned developers being the primary customers, kind of your main people that are using the platform the most. Are these
Yeah.
the acquisitions teams, Jack? They're out there looking at land, and they're not architects, they're not designers, but they want to know, what can we do with this land? Is it the acquisitions team typically?
Yes and no. So you're gonna not love my answer on that one too. It depends on the size of the business, right? We have some developers that are 2 or 3 man shops, right? So they wear all the hats. We also have, massive real estate developers too, and they have in-house design teams, but they also use TestFit within their site acquisition, site pursuits teams as well too, right? So a lot of in-house design for those larger firms are really bogged down with the later stage design. And things for site pursuits are usually shipped out of house because they don't want to bog that team down. But I would say, it depends on the industry, but a lot is in the acquisition side. I've had folks too, that have only ever used Excel that are now excelling at using TestFit, which is fantastic.
Why did you mention Excel?
Yeah.
It's like
Excel's
completely unrelated. Yeah. Or
a
is it?
fantastic tool,
Yeah.
but it's the old school way, right? And
I
TestFit still
see.
works on that similar premise of put in your goals, right? Once you have a model built, you're putting in your goals and you're hoping for that result, right? With TestFit, we already have the model built, you're putting in your goals and we're getting you that result, but it's generative, it's going to give you lots of results, it's going to show it to you visually and give you real quantities out of it.
Phenomenal. All right, let's move on to the demo. And before we do that, what should viewers be watching for uh, throughout this? Where would you like them to focus?
See, I like to look for the magic, and really for me, that's just the real time results. Think about how long it takes to get something, changed within a feasibility study. One of the things that I'll show, and I like to look at a lot, is, hey, I want to change my unit mix, right? Something that's so simple in practice or in thought, but is very difficult in practice.
Hmm,
We can do that in just a few seconds within TestFit. So look for the magic there, and excited to jump in.
let's do it.
The first input is going to be your address, coordinate, or APN. Anywhere in the US and Canada, we can get you anywhere. Very simple. Once you do that, then it's just a matter of picking your site, and you can do that in 3 different ways. Easiest one is using your parcels. So you can come in, select and drag, that combines them all together. And if you ever needed to, you can always remove ones or add them if you need to. Makes that super simple to do that as well. We also have that legal boundary kind of in there too. And then the data that comes in, we kind of talked about that, right? Being able to come in, looking at your elevations. We have flood zones and that sort of thing that come in as well, wetlands, soil data. We just start to layer on as much intelligence as we can because there's nothing worse than having to go to like 15 different softwares just to find out if you can build something. We're trying to bring that all in at once. Same thing, zoning. We bring that into that. Will then give you a bunch of data on the zoning. It'll tell you what's available there, and then major utilities as well too. That's a fun one, which just looks for your red herrings, like things that get in the way. So over here you can see massive pipelines, massive power lines. Also really helpful for our data center friends to be able to do that. But let's dive into the magic real quick. So when you're looking at it, you have your site and you have some step backs kind of coming in already. Up here in the top right, TestFit has all these different typologies. We'll focus in on housing, but maybe we'll do a little bit more if there's time. But then down here, these are all of your presets. And a preset is that collection of parameters to drive to a particular form. So we'll look at like an infill podium for a second. Once we have that, all we have to do is select run generative design. And what this is going to do is run thousands of different variations. So it's all being built in 3D in real time for you. So this is all different ways of laying out this site, all in just a matter of seconds. And there's one goal up here right now, which is 90 feet as our max height, and then we're stack ranking it based on number of units. fantastic just to kind of have that just at your fingertips, right? We can then change this. What if we wanted it to be 150 feet, right? It'll go ahead and rerun that in there for you and just give you hundreds, if not thousands, results.
What are these that you're scanning down with the with your mouse here with the arrow there? What are these? What is this here?
Yeah, so these are each one of the options. The blue bar represents whatever you're sorting by. So right now it's by number of units. This top one's 920, and then each one down below goes a little bit lower from that. We can get a little bit closer to those details by
Oh, in
opening this
terms of
up.
density. Okay, got it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all your density, dwelling unit per acres, those types of things.
And everything here is permitted for this location, is it? So you could go up to 900 and something units if you wanted to.
It depends, yeah, on
Not
your zoning.
permitted, I meant zoned. Sorry, I
Yeah,
meant
yeah, yeah.
zoned.
So you can add your zoning and that sort of thing. We have a lot of folks that come in and start to override those because they want to, upzone it or anything like that. So you can add your zoning. Right now, I just made up a fictitious 150 feet, but yeah, you can start to get into that as well too.
But
Um,
you're pulling in the actual zoning though, aren't you?
That's correct. Yeah. So over here on the left, you're pulling in the actual zoning. I think this one's a little bit more restrictive on this site. For an example, it's 0.75 for FAR, so we wouldn't be able to do the 900. And then all of those, and these can all then be attributed to this site. So yes, you absolutely can bring that all in.
So
And
how do you set it then to what is allowed rather than up
yeah,
zoning or something?
all I did was click this add zoning button, and then it starts to pull those all in here for you. So like FAR, your impervious
Ah.
coverage, your building coverage, those types of things. And you may just have to edit some of those parameters, and maybe this type of building wouldn't actually work for this site. But we can always, start to craft any of those different types of things in here as well too. But something to kind of look at as we start to get into this too, I'm just going to pop one back on real quick, is some of that, the iterations and the tweaking of everything, right? So parking is already um, being automatically designed for you, right? Each level, you've got your ADA and everything else. You have access points, you have ramping, all of that kind of being brought in. Then we go up to our unit levels, and real units are actually being located on here. And this is kind of like where I was talking about if you were to come to me, Adam, and say, like, hey, this is great, but I want 50% studios and let's say, 30% one beds and 20% two beds. That would take a while to kind of do in, CAD or anything else to kind of see what would fit. Just going to go ahead over here and say 50%. I'll put 30% and 20%. I think that's what I just said. And that goes ahead and resolves that entire building for us. So now we just increase our number of units because we did a lot more of the smaller ones. We can start to see different bed counts and everything else in there. But this is also where folks can get a lot more specific about what they want out of the software, meaning they can come in and actually use a database of units that they had before. So we have a lot of developers that say, hey, I don't have a unit set that I have built for me, but this project at, 123 Main Street in Utah, I really, really loved how that leased up. I want to use those units again. Just bring them into the software. It's a quick little setup, and then you can use them over and over again. And all you're doing is adjusting your unit mix, and you can then start to have those units as your basis.
And that's the unit design that you're talking about, the layout.
Exactly. That's the internal unit design. Yep.
Oh, it's really amazing. Okay.
Yeah. And then, you're getting into, your auxiliary spaces. So right here, you have this blue piece here. So this is like an amenity space. You can start to add in multiples of those. They can have, branching, different options for them. You can start to adjust size, that sort of thing. Down below, you're seeing this like red hue. What that's actually showing is our cut and fill. So for that site, we're starting to take that topography into play that we were looking at before. And then you're totaling up total amount of cut and fill and then any import or export. By default, TestFit wants to show you the least amount of import or export as possible. So we're going to go ahead and do that for you, but you can always adjust that elevation if you need to.
It's
And then
amazing.
from there,
Mm.
yeah, it's really fun. We have our development tab as well. This is where we do our early stage yield on cost estimation. So this is where up at the site level, we can start to look at our pro forma. So right now, this pro forma, you can come in and start to put in your own costs for the land, soft costs, hard costs, anything there, and then all of your assumed rents for that property. And then that'll start to adjust your yield on cost as you redesign. So even if we go back to that site and let's just say, the setback ends up having to come in, you can see down below how that's all updating with us in real time. So it's real instant feedback on design changes and what that means for your pro forma.
Okay. Incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It is kind of like a game at the end of the day. I definitely think so, but you can do a lot with it. You can even get into the manual drawing of things if you wanted to. So like let's say you don't want that wing, but you want one here for an example. Go ahead and do that. TestFit will then go ahead and try to redesign that for you in real time.
Okay, so we've got zoning, pro forma. What are the other inputs? Number of units,
Yeah,
amenities.
unit mix, unit size, that sort of thing. Garage even as well. You can start to get into all different
Hmm.
things. So like well, even looking at drive aisle width on some of your more infill locations, you can drop it down to 22 feet, and that might increase the number of parking stalls you can get. Dead end turn radius, those types of things. Parking stall size, 9 by 18 is by default. You could do, if I go back into 2D for a second, we can do angled stalls if we need to, just to try and maximize some of that yield as well. Looking at column spacing to make sure that we have enough space for all of those. So a lot of things are set as standard. So 9 by 18, pretty standard. Some areas now of the country need like 9 by 20, or even 10 by 20, depending on what you're doing. So you can always craft that to what you're building. And then same thing with the building as well, looking at your unit mix, looking at even your verticals, for your stairs and elevators. These are, loosely based on IBC code, essentially looking at, you know, where we need those vertical circulation paths so that we don't have any dead end distances that are non-compliant, those types of things, making sure it's as real as possible as we can be, even at this early stage of building these buildings.
Jack, how do you integrate local regulations? For example, you've talked about parking, and I forgot the dimensions that you showed here, but
Yeah.
you showed some dimensions. Typically, you would have to do, a developer would have to do research on what the local regs say and what the zoning says in terms of the requirements for that location. Isn't that information? Do you bring that information in so what shows up for this location is that is compliant with the local regulations, or does the user still have to go out and verify what those conditions are?
Yeah, so zoning is one of those animals that is it's hard to conquer, right? So my background do it. I used to do permitting up in Northern California, that sort of thing.
Mm,
It's very difficult. So what we've done is we've partnered with Zonomics. They're a fantastic company, and they aggregate zoning data for across the country. Right now, it's about 500. It's for areas of the cities or counties that have a population of 500,000 or greater. And we pull in this data set over on the left, which is all of your zoning details. And what we pull in is existing zoning by right, for, like max FAR, you're looking at max building coverage,
mm,
setbacks, those types of things. Things that we don't necessarily capture yet, which is still kind of the secret sauce of your local developer, is, density bonuses that you may or may not be able to find, some overlay districts that, are a little bit harder to rationalize in all cities. I know some cities we have them, others we don't. But yeah, so it really just depends. And there's a lot of people that are coming in and test it looking to upzone, right? So they know the settings that they want, and they could come in and just put that. So like, let's say they're upzoning it and their max, let's say FAR is, going to be 3, right? So they can then have that in there. And right now we're sitting at a 2.8. So it makes that a little bit easier for them to start to understand, base case, like what's the worst case scenario if we bought this land and we had to stick with existing zoning versus if
mm.
we spent the time and entitlements and upzoning it, what could we get out of that land as well too?
What is the output then? So you've got somebody in acquisitions, let's say,
Yeah.
who's run through this and says, "All right, you've got an amazing 3D image here on the screen
Hmm.
of this building," and they say, "Okay, yep, this is the one that works." What's
Yeah.
the output? How do they now use? How does this now transition through the workflow to the next step?
It's a great question. So it depends on what you're kind of looking for. If you're looking for, the model itself, we have a lot of developers that will then push this to their consultants once they've finished their underwriting. You can push this out to a CAD file, a Revit file, a SketchUp file, those types of things. You can
Mm,
get all of your data down below as an Excel file as well. It comes out as a CSV. But the really fun one, and let me just kind of share this real quick, is being able to create your own custom report. So this is what TestFit looks like on the web. You can share this as a link itself, kind of like a Google Drive file. That
mhm,
allows anyone to kind of get in there. They'll have access to the full 3D. They can start to orbit around. They have all the data at their fingertips as well. So it's a real interactive type of connection too. But then you can
mm,
come in and go to our reports page, and this is where you can quickly create a custom report. So this is one of our custom templates. You can kind of go in there. You can then put in your deal name, deal address, the photo of your company or logo, whatever you're looking for, and then it'll start to populate the exact building that we were just working on, and then you can customize your views. But all the data is linked. You can then, adjust whatever you kind of want here. Maybe you want your earthwork tabulated there. On this one, maybe we'll make this our 3D view. Just go ahead and save that. And then maybe this one will be our, first floor view. So you can kind of start to customize those however you want.
mm.
And then now you've got a custom report. You can export this, bring it to your investment committee, however you want to present that. And this exports as a PDF. So nice and clean and easy to kind of go from design to output in just a matter of minutes.
Really incredible. So how much time does this actually save, Jack? That's a daft question, but
A lot.
mm,
It depends on who you're talking to, but for developers, on average, it's about 9 to 15 hours per site that people are saving with TestFit. So if you start to look at hundreds of sites a year, that's a lot of time saved across the board.
well,
But
yeah, but
really,
it's 9 to 15 hours. But on the other hand, just correct me if I'm wrong, but a developer finds a piece of land and then sends it, has their criteria and sends it to their architect,
yep.
typically,
So yeah,
right?
you're
And
exactly
so
right.
it's not 15 hours. It's like whenever the architect can get to it.
Right. You're exactly right. So the 9 to 15 hours is like in-house like work to actually run through the analysis, that sort of
Mm,
thing. That doesn't take into account the like week or two that you're waiting for the first result, right? And then the back and forth that you go through. So
right.
it is a lot more time than that. You're absolutely right. So hours spent is 9 to 15. Total time is weeks to months per deal. And when you're looking at 4 or 5 deals a month, that really starts to add up.
How quickly have you seen users go from, uh, first evaluating a site to deciding that they're going to buy it? Like that
Very
it
quickly.
actually, yeah.
Yeah, so it again it depends, but we've had folks that get in there and are proficient all on their own. We do onboarding with every team that we bring on board, so we make sure that you're up to speed. Others it takes a bit longer. It just kind of depends. We just had a client or a customer, I should say, that came on board mid-December, and before we could even get all of our onboarding done with them, they reported that they've already like blown through their January plans. Like they are ahead of schedule now because they've been using TestFit. So really cool to see people be able to pick it up and go. But we're here to support anyone that it maybe doesn't run that fast, but we'll definitely work with you.
What are the most commonly used typologies? You've used this term typology, I think asset class, but what are the most commonly used ones?
Yeah,
And
that's
actually,
another
what's the
great
most
question.
commonly used one? And can we look at it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, multifamily is definitely the most commonly used one. I can
Mm,
show you industrial as well. So let me go ahead and share that one real quick
sure.
too. Um, Industrial is one of our larger ones. And actually, funny enough, we got that request years and years ago when we were at NMHC. We had folks that were showing them multifamily, like, can you do industrial as well? We're like, yeah. So here we are.
Okay.
So let's kind of take this site for an example. We'll just do something kind of big and fun. But with this here, we'll just go ahead and click our industrial building. And we've got a bunch of different types in here. So I'll just click all of them for an example.
So,
And
so
then
while you do that, your as TestFit is acknowledging that this site that you've identified is zoned for industrial. If you'd chosen this for industrial, it wouldn't show at all, would it? And it was a resi area.
So not exactly. So this is actually zoned as I believe MS4. So you're allowed to override any sort of existing zoning within TestFit. You can customize that and basically say like, hey, only follow that existing zoning. But no, by default, TestFit is going to allow you to build whatever you would like on that land,
Hmm.
and then kind of give you that fail or pass metric based on what that zoning is, and you can start to restrict it from there.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so you can start to, put in any sort of building that you kind of want on here. Let me kind of dive into our presets real quick. So like looking at this one for an example, you have your, massive industrial building. This is looking at cross-loaded with a bunch of parking on there. We can get into, all different parts of this building as well. This is where, similar to the family where you have your custom units, a lot of folks are getting into more custom industrial buildings or even data center buildings as well too. So we support being able to go in and adjust anything within here as well. So even just adjusting grid sizing, what your structure is actually going to look like, that all comes through within TestFit very easily. And then you start to adjust different things within the software to kind of get what you're looking for as far as like fire code access, making sure that we have enough space for that. Getting into even some of these like more prototype style designs, so something like this where you have a very prototypical building that you're looking for on the site. That's what we'll then go ahead and use that and try and figure out what's the best mix for you between different prototypes and all of that too.
Do you find that users discover that this helps them avoid errors? I mean, I remember the developments ground up stuff that I've done, and it makes me wonder, okay, so I figured out I could put this number on there with my architect. I would love to have had this there and wonder if I may not have been able to design it a lot better, obviously a lot faster. Is that what people are finding that they suddenly say, yeah, we had this design, but wow, you've shown us something that is significantly better and makes the site work?
100%. Yeah, we get that a lot. I think one of the things too we've heard from customers, especially ones that have been around for a few years too, is, test it gets you out of the like, what if we did this or what if we did that, and more into the conversation of, is this the right site for us? Right. I think a lot of folks, especially in development, like we get kind of bogged down in the like, well, what if I like, adjusted the building like 3 feet here, or if I, put a pond over here versus over there. And because TestFit kind of runs all of those options for you, it gives you more comfort to have the conversation of, well, is this even the right neighborhood that we want to be in? Like, is this you know, um, the right land that we want to go purchase versus like, can we eke out a few more feet? Because TestFit can get you there.
And will it deliver highest and best use as well without me having to tinker with it? So if I've got a site based on the current zoning, what's the best thing that could go here? What's going to be the most lucrative?
Certainly can. So when you're looking at like a site, we'll take this one for an example, and we'll just kind of apply the zoning to it, and then you kind of just tap into your all of your like different typologies, and then you can select all of them, which would take a few minutes, but basically you can run
Mhm.
all different options, and then if I run generative design, it'll then go ahead and run through all of them.
Mhm.
Um, and there we go. And so it'll kind of start to show you like massive amounts of these. And then if you put all of these in, it'll then show you ones that actually fit that criteria. So it looks like garden style is probably the best use for this land.
Mm.
And you can start to build into that. It doesn't mean that you couldn't necessarily split this land up and do some different things with it, but like if you're doing it all, taking it down all at once, garden looks to be the best within the constraints that are coming for here. There's some things for hotels it looks like that could also work. But garden is definitely the
How are you deriving those conclusions? Are you looking at some kind of ROI or something? Like how you determine why is that at the top? Why is that saying custom garden rather
yeah.
than something else as the best?
So yeah, it's a great question. So basically what it's doing is it's taking all like the known constraints that we have. So like you're looking at your height, your FAR, your impervious coverage, and your building coverage. And it takes all of those like standard profiles for design for all of the different typologies to see what can fit best, right? And we're stack ranking it based on units because we know units is a good metric for what your eventual, income and that sort of thing will be. And so there's some hotels that kind of look a little bit funky, but they technically fit. And then you have this is your garden building, and it has more units than like this other garden style. But really, what that's showing you is that we can't go as vertical as we'd like here, right? Because we have a max height of 40 feet, so it doesn't really make sense to build a garage probably anywhere. Same thing with your FAR. So when you're starting to look at what's your best surface parked as a dwelling unit per acre, it really comes down to your garden style and that sort of thing that comes out of it. Very soon we'll be able to start to layer on some like automatic pro forma updates within year two. So you can start to have a filter being some of your pro forma outputs, but that's more to come. We kind of talked about that at our end of the year wrap up in last year.
Jack, is there anything else that you really want viewers to see that you've found people react to very positively and also have those kind of wow, eureka moments when they see it? Or have we
You
covered it?
know,
Because I'm not saying that what you've shown is not wow already,
yeah,
because it is. But is there anything that you would also like to add that you're seeing people enjoying using?
I'm going to be the goofy tech guy, but the best way to get that eureka moment is to have it done on one of your sites. And so our team can help you run one of your sites live just so you can kind of see that because, XYZ America site looks great on a plan, but everyone wants to see something that's close to home. So that's where we see a lot of that impassioned reply, I would say, is when you're looking at something that you've already designed, something maybe you've already built, and just to see what kind of results TestFit can build for you. That's where you get a lot of that too. I will say, shadow studies are always something fun that people like to see, just because we can start to look at, what your shadows are doing. Same thing with like a heat map of all of your sun exposure. That's a nice one too, especially for our northern state friends. But all of that, it just kind of depends on what you're working on. But yeah, I would say definitely reach out if you're interested. Our team can definitely run a site for you, or even a couple if you need to see that and see the value out of what we can get for you.
Typically, how long does it take to gain a reasonable level of competence using the software, have you found?
A few weeks to a month. It kind of depends though.
Mm.
The more detailed you get, the longer it takes to master it, right? If you're looking for quick, more generic results off of, something kind of like this, it can be a few weeks to feel really confident. If you're trying to get more detailed, you're trying to get into all unit designs, that sort of thing. It could take a month or so, but, again, we're here to help you guys get up to speed. We have a lot of folks that are in the software. I think our total count from last year is like 90,000 people using TestFit. So a lot of folks, a lot of peers that you can talk to, and then us as well to kind of get you up and running.
I'm sorry, did you say 90,000 people?
90,000. I think that's the total number. I might be speaking a little bit out of turn, but yeah, I believe so. Last year we had, let me pull up those numbers real quick, but yeah, we had a lot of folks building in TestFit last year. It was, a fantastic showing across the board.
How much time, it's just a couple more questions, but how much time do you find power users spend on the platform?
A lot of times, so sorry, let me correct that real quick. We had 90,000 deals. We had 32,000 users in TestFit. So I got my
Okay.
numbers swapped there, but yeah, 32,000 users, 90,000 deals. We had 9.5 million dwelling units, designed and tested last year across those deals. So, um,
Hmm.
on a per deal basis, it's pretty low, but overall, our power users are usually ones working at larger firms necessarily, who are doing, a lot more throughput. So on a per deal basis, it's relatively low. I think, when you're looking at softwares like Excel or, AutoCAD or Revit or something like that, you're spending hours to days on a particular file. With Tesla, it's a lot
Hmm.
lower than that. And, it's really just a matter of um, how many options you're looking for and what's your considered done rate, once you've found the option that you like.
Okay, so let's talk about pricing as we start to wrap up.
Sure.
So typically, so what is your pricing model? Like, how do people pay for this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we utilize a site credit for TestFit. So basically, each site equates to about 300 acres in the software. and it's a number of site credits that you would purchase in a year in order to use TestFit. We do that because really the value of TestFit is being able to have a go or no go decision on a site. And no is almost just as valuable as a yes if you don't have that runaway pursuit cost, right?
Mm.
So you can do unlimited iterations on it. We don't use any sort of limit for number of users. So the whole company can get in, start to test options, do anything you want because we believe coordination starts with unlimited users.
Mm.
And so, it's just based on the number of site credits that you want. We have folks at our lower end, and then we have some that are looking at, hundreds to thousands of sites a year.
Really? And how much, can you talk about what the cost is of each site to get a license?
So yeah, it kind of varies. Our base pricing is on our website, it's 10,000 for 18. And that's like the highest cost per site.
Hang on.
Um,
Let me extrapolate from that. 10,000 for 18 sites.
Correct.
Okay, so somebody that only has one deal that they're working on, they can't come in and just do one deal.
They certainly can with our data maps and urban planner. We have a couple other options that don't have the full generative capability. If they're working on one or two
Mm.
deals, time isn't as big of a function for them, but they can definitely come in and start to work through those things. But yeah, starting off with 18, that's about one or two a month,
Hmm.
depending on what you're doing. And then, scaling from there is where teams really find the value, right? We know it takes about 40 sites to find one that moves forward. So even if you're only building one or two sites a year, you're probably testing 20, 30, or 40 more. So that's really where we've kind of found our user group.
So 10,000 for 18 sites. And typically what would that cost if you weren't using TestFit? Forget time, just
Yeah,
in terms of,
if we're putting time aside, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It really depends. There's a lot of variance between the different asset classes or typologies, right? When you're
Mm.
looking at something like retail is on the lower end, it can be anywhere from 500 to $1,000. You're looking at multifamily. I know we paid anywhere from 2,500 to $10,000 for a feasibility study at Brookfield, and then even doing that for industrial data centers, it starts to go up and up. There are ways that you can kind of get maybe some uh, you know free work on occasion from a consultant or that sort of thing when you're doing it out of house, but depends on what you're doing and what level of detail you're comfortable with from those types of things. I've found that you kind of get what you pay for. You really want to have people focused on what you're doing and get that turn around as quickly as you can. So TestFit really does close the loop a lot faster by having it at your fingertips.
Have you found any unusual or unexpected uses of TestFit?
So many. Our support team could probably give you some other ways too, but we've seen people do some wild things in TestFit. Um, I mean, it's not even that wild on one of them, but we helped a zoo redo parking layouts. We helped some people do some new like self storage. It's like luxury car storage, man
Mm.
caves, if you will. Those are getting popular. People use TestFit for those types of things. Even like we found folks using our urban planner data maps just for restriping purposes. Our parking algorithm is truly second to none. And people are using it just to figure out what they should do for relaying out a parking lot to get it most efficient. So, and then there's other ones like cold storage, some battery storage folks that are using TestFit as well too. So it really runs all across the board, but we primarily stay focused on our asset classes up above.
Jack, thank you for doing this. What is the best way? What would be the best way for somebody to follow up? What would you like the most?
Yeah, I mean, head to the website, check it out. We got some videos and stuff on there, and then there's a button right up there just to reach out to our team. You can also email sales@testfit.io to reach out, and then you can find myself or any of the team on LinkedIn. We're responsive there as well too.
Jack Jaws, you are Director of New Markets at TestFit.io. Thank you for doing that demo.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
All right, that was Jack Jaws, who is Director of New Markets at TestFit.io. Isn't that absolutely mind-blowing how you do that? Gosh, I've been in this business a very long time and I've designed sites. Oh my goodness, the stuff that I've designed and built and the work that you have to go through to actually figure out what is the best use of a piece of land can take weeks or months. I mean, it's just such a slow iterative process. So to be able to do it in nanoseconds, like Jack was able to demonstrate you can do on the TestFit platform, is game changing. End of story. Period. Right. Jack, thanks for joining me. That was really phenomenal presentation. Like I said, after, I can't believe how quickly that actually went. But anyway, what to say? Time flies when you're having fun. So anyway, thank you so much for having joined me. And dear viewers, also, I really hope you get the idea now, right? This is how AI is changing commercial real estate industry. You have to adopt, you have to learn, adopt, and stay ahead of the crowd, because if you don't, you're going to be left behind by people who are using platforms like testfit.io. Okay, please go to my website, gowercrowd.com, sign up for my newsletter. It's totally free. I'm pushing out summaries of this and other podcasts or other shows over the next few months. You don't want to miss any of them. They really are game changing, actually. It's really cool stuff. All right, that's all at gowercrowd.com. And that is all I've got for today's episode. Thanks for joining me. And until next time, it's Adam Gower signing off.